Right. So, hello and welcome to the podcast that is still yet to be named. I am your host, Lizzie Lawley, the founder of Wombat, and extremely pregnant that I could give birth at any moment. But let's hope I hold it through the session. I'll keep my legs crossed. And today we have a spectacular lineup. So, first up, we have a man who doesn't just follow trends, he sets them. He's a CEO, tech business entrepreneur, and connoisseur of all things new and exciting. The dynamic, daring, and delightful David.
Thank you.
And our next guest, very excited to speak to you today, is a powerhouse in his own right. He is the brilliant mind co-founding and leading the truly innovative company Lutra. Prepare to be amazed by the co-founder and CEO, the one and only Jiquan. So that is our incredible panel for today. We're going to do a deep dive into some of the fascinating topics about Lutra and strategy and setting up your business. So buckle up because this is going to be a fun one. It's going to be one for the watch list. I know that David and I have a ton of questions for you, Jiquan. So I'd like to kick off with one that has been burning in our minds. So firstly, could you explain in your own words how Lutra works, where it came from, and just a little bit about the product?
Sounds great. Thanks, Lizzie. Thanks for David and having me on this podcast. Super great to talk to all of these entrepreneurs in this community here and sharing my experience there. So maybe a bit of a background on myself and how we came to make Lutra. So I've been doing AI research for a long time now, since grad school days at Stanford, where I did deep learning research in 2009 when it was not sexy, actually, kind of sideshow in the community there. And then that evolved into Coursera, where I helped to build the first online courses in machine learning. And then Google Brain, where I did applied research, and now Lutra. And so for me, the evolution here has always been about how do we have technology that gives people more abilities to do things they couldn't otherwise do before, essentially new superpowers, right? And for me, the pivotal point in here, as I saw the AI LLM technology evolve, was starting to be able to reason, code, and really help us potentially get things done. And we saw this in the early days of 2023 when GPT-4 came out, where you saw the models are like, oh man, they're starting to show signs of reasoning. I give them a task, they can start to see that they can start to execute upon it. But what was missing from these setups there was that the AI is just the brains, right? The models. It's not connected to the rest of the world that we work in. It's not connected to the applications we use, our Notion, Airtable, HubSpots, Google Workspaces, Outlook. But if we could get the data in there, suddenly the ability to do so much more just expands. So how many of us today are copying and pasting things into ChatGPT or Claude and saying, do something and then copy pasting it out, right? If the AI could directly work with the applications, that really cuts off a lot of friction. And if the AI can orchestrate across them, we then start automating a lot more. So that's kind of the genesis of Lutra, where we wanted to really understand if we were to design a computing environment, a way for AI to work in a first-party way with all these applications, what would that look like? Would it be like, emulate a human, point and click and type as if a human would? Or would it be like call some functions, APIs, low level into the machine? Or would it be something else? Do we need to design something else where that gives us the reliability we need for it to work well? So in a nutshell, that's how Lutra came about. And what it really does is, number one, connects with all the applications you work with. And number two, allow you to conversationally automate work and get things done across them. And number three, increasingly we're seeing the ability to create what we call artifacts and things that are not just doing the work, but producing work outcomes, dashboards, reports, pulling it directly from data sources, and then allowing you to get business insights into the data you already have. Right? So over time, we've seen that shift in being very technical and how does this work? So eventually, how do we drive business outcomes for people when they're using the products? So maybe one question I think you asked is where did the name come from? I jumped to that. So behind me is a little cute otter here, and so Lutra turns out to be a genus of otters. It's Latin for these otter terms. And otters are these mammals that use tools, right? So we're thinking AI using tools is kind of the inspiration behind the name there. Yeah.
That's super interesting. That's really cool. My company Wombat, it came from being a WhatsApp bot. And I kept saying WhatsApp bot over and over and over again. It mutated into Wombat. Yeah.
Oh, there we go.
A lot of animal themes.
Animal themes, yes.
That's amazing. Could you take us back to the very, very beginning? What was the initial spark or the aha moment for your business idea? And how did it evolved from concept to something tangible?
Yeah. So the initial spark of it really came out from tinkering. So today I think with all these AI tools with us, by really tinkering a bit, like, if I give the model this input, what can I get? So you're playing with it, giving it like, if I give it access, the first really early versions of it was we give it access to the internet, my, Slack chat access. Could I chat with it? Could I start asking it to do things? Get information from me, reach out to people, get LinkedIn profiles, start doing a bit of like, work I would normally be doing manually. And through that tinkering, we started to see what worked and didn't work. This was in 2020, 2023, early days. And then from that tinkering, it kind of gives you that give us an intuition of like where this technology could go, right? So I think the AI technology is so new. Without that step of just experimentation, you don't really know what you can do with it. And then from there, the next step in there was really a very long path to reliability. I think the challenge today with AI has been amazing demos, and when you see this big demos with this very, very, clearly defined prompt with like, you do this and do this next, something is up, like someone spent a lot of time tuning the prompt up there. But the hard part from, going from a technology proof of concept to a deployment in AI today is actually that hard journey of making things reliable, like making things actually work in production. When users come to the system and they type stuff in there, it's not going to be whatever you expect, right? So we completely different. Humans, it's very hard to express precisely what we intend to do. And the machines are very precise at following instructions. And so when we see that part of it, it's really butting up against that and figuring out how we can build systems that are robust, resistant to what users type in, be able to self-recover, be able to figure out how to do things right. And along the way, we learned a lot about how AI tools and should connect with the rest of the world, like ecosystems of applications. And then I think along the way, we also learned a lot about, hey, where is the value being derived in this, right? How are people thinking about not just a toy to play with, but business value that they're getting from it? So increasingly, where we're seeing, I think the AI thing is interesting in that it's so broad. People use these tools for everything, but really it's a very, very, very different surface of value they get. If you're using it to something like read the news and summarize it, it's kind of cool, but it's not, the value is there, but it's not as high value unless you can share it with lots of people who care about that aspect. But if I'm using it for put in my sales data from my point of sales system, give me insights into my sales for the month, tell me how I should adjust the menu items in my restaurant, to tell me, what's this, suddenly you get huge value out of it. So part of the, thing as an entrepreneur that we are going through in this process, I think all of us do, is how do we take that very broad technology, but really identify pockets of applications that have really, high ROI for our users. Right. So that's kind of like the journey we're going through. So now, I think maybe right now we're, with the technology is really great. And now we're really pushing on, like really figuring out how that high value use cases can be in the hands of our users.
I mean, that sounds awesome. And I think that it's so many questions there, but one question that I have is firstly, it sounds like it's about differentiating yourself. So it sounds like you guys are differentiating yourself by really focusing on those really high value use cases then, because when you've built a tool, which it seems like you have, that can do everything, it must be super difficult to figure out, right, what is my spike here in such a big market. So yeah, could you just let us know focus a little bit about how you differentiate yourself and ultimately how you're going to win? Because this is awesome. Yeah.
No, it's I would say, the market is challenging, right? Because AI is a space where it's noisy, it's crowded, everyone has a story to tell. The problem in this space right now, from a marketing perspective, I think, is that most tools looks very great on the surface, but when you actually use it, it doesn't really work. And so, I think the first thing that we're differentiating ourselves is that we want things to work. So, it's not just a shiny tool without flashy demo. It's like, we want it to, like, when you use it, it actually delivers you the value we purport, right, to say that we'll do. And so I think that's number one, like that trust building is going to be a exercise that's not a, a week, 2 week, 1 month thing. Trust building that things work is like multi-year things, right? You need to make this work. So that's number one. We're very focused on the long game in there. Number two, I think, is differentiating in two ways. One is that for users that are early adopters into the space, they're often, technical. They're often like interested in how this works. We are having very different approaches from a technical perspective on how our technology works, which makes it more robust and reliable. And users who see that, they intuit it, they get more trust in that too, right? Now, not all users are that way. So now the business users that we really care about, that's where we want to get to and really help them get value from the system really quickly. And so over there, where we're differentiating on is where we initially had a lot of use cases where people came in for very, I'll say, toy use cases. They're playing with technology, seeing how it works, which is great. Right? People should do that and we should play with it. But over time, what we want to show people is there's true business value you can derive from using the software. And maybe I give you 2 examples of that. One example was the earlier one I talked about, connecting Lutra to your POS systems or your accounting systems and getting, insights into what your business looks like. A second one is looking into things like really mundane processes, people going through lots of files, going through, getting out data from that, putting it into another system. But then the key in here is that not only being able to automate that process like in a very reliable fashion, but showing them that it's actually really easy to do so. So the interesting thing is that a lot of the AI tools out there that you see today, they turn out to be a flood of what I call drag and drop visual builders. You drag and drop things and it's really complicated. Where we think the future is going to be is actually when the AI orchestrates everything for you. So conversational automation is going to happen. And I think if you look very closely at like how many people are doing that, it's actually very few, right? And actually that the reason is that it's very hard to get working reliably. So, the main TLDR is like play long game, get trust in users, make sure things actually work. And number 2, deliver really high value and show the users how easy it is to do it. These are the 2 things in there.
Just on that, just for people like me who are slightly less technical, what do you mean by conversational automation?
Yeah, so what I mean by that is that when you want to get something done on the machine, you tell it what you want to do. So let me give you an example. Imagine you are looking into companies to sell your product into, maybe you sell to startups. And one big source of places to get startup information is the YC companies. If you sell to them, they'll be amazing. So if you can go to Lutra today, for example, and say, hey, go get me all the YC companies in the Spring 25 batch, X25. Literally type that in as English. Create a new Notion database for that in this page. Type that in English, 2 sentences. You press enter. Then the system, from just those 2 sentences, orchestrates and figures out what you want to do. It gets the data, tells you how it's getting it, pulls it all together, starts creating the Notion database, starts pulling it together, starts creating thousands of entries in there. In this case, I think probably tens of entries. But if you say the whole YC database is about 5,000 entries, creates all of that in there. Now, once that's done, you might want to say, okay, is this company a right target for me? So for every company you found, could you also web research what they do and determine if this is the case and add a new column to my Notion database? Hit enter. Right. From that statement, from that instruction that you give it, the system then proceeds to like churn and do that again, right? And what's difficult about making this work is multifold, right? One, understanding instructions, connecting the applications, but also ambiguity, right? When we specify this task, sometimes we're ambiguous in how we do it. So the system needs to be smart enough to understand when to come back to you to clarify things. And number 2, what's hard about it is that when you give it a very big task to do, like in this one, go through a ton of companies and look into information about them, you don't want to just go and do it and come back with wrong data 2 hours later. You need to have it be, okay, let me show it to you. Is it right on this first 2, 3 examples? Okay, now that's good. Now let me do it for all of them. And now the third thing that's hard is that when you do all of that, not only do you need to do that, you need to set expectations. This is going to take 2 hours. And if you have a credit-based system, it's going to consume 1,000 credits in your account. Are you sure you can do this? Right. So you try to see all these different complexities on the steep end, but you need to predict, how complex the task is, how to come back to a user, and that's where I think the value of a platform like Lutra brings, right? Not just the brains, but then all of these experiences tied together in a unified way.
That's really interesting. And do you see, because what we've discussed amongst some of the AI prompts team for sure, we've discussed kind of Zapier and its future, or Zapier, however you want to say it. So do you see actually what you're talking about automation there? I see that what you just described is a one-off job from one place to another. But do you actually see this as like agents on standby waiting for data, being able to pull data and put it somewhere else?
Yes.
So anyone can ultimately set up a Zapier, Zap, or whatever, whatever you call it, a Lutra, I don't know, but whatever it might be, by ultimately just saying, right, every time I get a form like that submitted, can you just let me know if it's high value? And, so you don't even have to, it's even taking out the code out of no code in a way. So
Yeah, exactly. So actually, this is where maybe I'll talk a little bit about how the differentiator in Lutra versus a lot of the Zapier's versus like ChatGPT like systems too.
yeah,
So the one differentiator that is from a low code, no code technical perspective is that when Lutra operates and does this work for you, it doesn't just call functions like what you see in function calling. You might have heard of that in LLM world. What it does instead is actually to produce software code to do it. So when you tell Lutra, go get me my Notion thing, go and do this and that for me. Behind the scenes, every time you do it, it's almost like a junior engineer writing a little bit of code, running it and saying, did that go well? Right, a bit more code, and that go well.
Mm.
So at the end of the day, when you're done showing Lutra how a task is done, you kind of work with it to get it done, you can then tell Lutra to say, hey, make a playbook out of this. And what that does is that it looks at the history of the conversation and say, okay, we did that. That was good. We did that. Oh, you didn't like that. Okay, scratch that. And then it puts that all together into a actual software code. So if you use Lutra, you start seeing writing, like Python like code in there. That then you can save away and allow it to run your point autonomously, right, on triggers and whatnot. So the interesting analogy in here is that traditionally, I think systems like Zapier, no-code systems have been designed for people, humans to work with, right? So we need to understand all the blocks, drag and drop, make it happen. Or they have been designed for developers to work with, APIs, developers to stuff in that. What we are seeing emerge, I think, is a set of systems that are going to be designed for what I call AI to work with. Right. So if you think about that, it's like, okay, what is that right design framework there? I don't think it's the AI point and clicking is very unreliable for an AI. The UIs change all the time. And the developer version of it also isn't right for the AI because they're meant for developers. If an error happens, it just says, oh, unprocessable entity 422 error. The AI has no idea what to do with it. Increasingly, what you're seeing is this like design space where how do we design interfaces to applications so that the AI knows how to work with it, right? And so that's kind of like the whole story here. That I think you might have heard of this concept of MCPs,
Yeah.
model context protocols. It's the beginning of that story for the community on what that layer looks like, and it's very different. When an error occurs in this AI tooling layer, I can't find the field name to update the record on. Instead of saying error, I can't find the field name. You really want that tool to say, oh, I can't find the field name. Here are the names that are valid. Pick one of these other ones instead, or go create a new one, right? Then the AI model now can look at that error and go like, okay, I know how to resolve this. I can fix it using these approaches. So we're doing a lot of that, and part of Lutra is making that core happen, and increasingly moving it from instead of people either managing drag and drop components or coding up things, I think people like us will be managing the AIs that does that on our behalf. So the AI is going to be coding behind the scenes for us. The AI will be running the code for us. The AI will be debugging it for us. And then we manage the AI and like telling it what's good and bad and our goals.
Okay. So it is June 2025 right now. A burning question in terms of your coding. There's quite a few of us that do quite a bit of coding, and there's some little cat fights going on. So we want the definitive answer for the most experienced guy out of all of us. So what is it?
I cannot miss your question because I think you dropped off for a second there for me. I'm not sure, Lizzie, you did too.
The model of choice in June 2025 for programming. What is it?
Ooh, controversial. You can plead the fifth if you want.
Yeah, no, I will tell you what we use. We use Claude a lot.
Yeah.
For internal coding purposes. So Claude's Sonnet series has been amazing.
Yeah.
So Claude 3.5, 3.7, 4 has been amazing. It's the best quality cost trade-off, and the outputs are great. So yeah, that's what we use now.
And I was just going to say, what slight follow-up question to that? I'm going to put you on the spot. Cursor or windsurf?
Cursor at the moment.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good.
But I would say I anticipate the gap between the products to be narrower and narrower. They would look very similar in that ways. Also very interested in like Claude Code as well. Like this has been a very interesting development where rather than the IDE, you just terminal and just go at it, right? That's been also very interesting, and I think that's that has a bit more promise in there too, longer term.
I think from what I've seen recently, I think there are combinations of tool and model that are so powerful in their own right now. I mean, the way that I see coding now is not how I saw it 6 months ago. It's everything has moved to such a high level now. And yeah, I mean, I see all of them coming out with background agent as their next thing that they're moving to. Claude Code looks fantastic for that. But the Cursor latest release looks like that's their place to double down on as well. So it's really a really exciting space in the coding space at any rate.
Yeah, no, completely. I mean, the part that I think that's super exciting is, the designer on my team now uses Cursor. Like that's all. I'm like the fact that you're tightening up the loops between how teams work. Role compression, a designer can now mock in Cursor directly and do all their work in there, hand it off to the engineer to get it final on. Like that whole process been amazing. Now I think we're still in this stage where, interestingly enough, I think the biggest beneficiaries to this are the experienced engineers who are embracing the technology, right?
Yeah.
Because these models still make mistakes. Like sometimes Cursor produces stuff for me. Then in the other day, I was asking it to improve how we do some scrolling behavior in our application. It wrote all this code, and I was like, oh, that works pretty well. Let me try to review it. And then after that while, I thought about it, and I was like, oh, let me go and check the documentation. Oh, it turns out there's an easier way to do it if I just enable 2 flags in this library reuse. So there's this weird thing where the models are going to get things working today, but it's not always the best way to do it yet. Like my senior engineer last week was refactoring some Cursor code that they made 3 copies or something. But I think that's going to quickly improve, right? So that's going to quickly improve, and it's this very interesting phase right now where they work, they do produce things that do work. Long-term maintenance is not really there yet, but over time, I think that's going to improve as well.
Yeah, and I think in terms of the coding, I find myself doing a lot of AI code coaching with my teams and with other people that ask me as well. To be honest, I had a call just yesterday where some acquaintance, some lady just said, "Can I just have half an hour with you?" And same kind of thing. But I think there are principles there that actually engineers don't understand quite yet, that they will start to get as well. Like being able to ask the right thing, to double check things in the right way that's off your head, being able to just basic prompting principles, like break it down into 3 questions for me, take it through me slowly, that kind of thing. I think engineers are just learning as well now. It's a whole new for everyone. And a lot of the time engineers don't know how to speak to people as much as, non-engineers. And it's a skill. Prompting is a skill. So I think that's more in line with speaking to people. So I think all of us are learning at the moment as to where it's going to go. But yeah.
I completely agree. Yeah. My co-founder is a back-end developer. He's full stack, but everyone leans a certain way. And I come from the product design, make it pretty side. And there's some things that he's been making recently because he's been using Cursor and all kinds of stuff. I'm like, did you really make this? I'm actually very impressed. But obviously it's the AI guiding him more on the best practices for UI and UX. And I'm like, wow. He was terrible before. Now I'm like, wow, okay. I only need to do a few tweaks here, So it's cool how not only designers kind of going into the code world, but also back-end developers like my co-founder, being able to thread themselves into the front end.
And what's also interesting about that as well is that what people don't think about when that happens is the time saved in terms of communication and organization that's needed when you have even more than one person involved. So when one person can do the majority of the work, it's just that's why the big is amazing, absolutely amazing. Yeah.
Actually, the anecdote I have here is maybe you think about the Lutra role. We're actually trying to extend that beyond the coding role. So maybe as an example there, we connected our email infrastructure active campaign into Lutra, and it turns out that my marketing growth lead right now, he's able to do all the data analysis he wants without talking to anyone on that end to get that data. It's like, oh, go and get me all the data of the emails you send, cross-reference with their user behavior. Is this email actually effective? Stuff like that. And I think what we are going to see is just that effect where if the AI can work with all these applications, can code and do all these things, people can do more. Like a single person can take on more roles, right? Even out of the product design engineering space. Operations, customer support, sales, marketing, we want to see a bit of a blend in that you can start more easily reaching over to other departments and just get more done.
I completely agree with you there. I think this was all designed by engineers, all of the coding and, you know, all of the models and everything like that. And I think engineers have obviously picked it up first, and software engineers have made most use of it. But what you can see in the software engineering space, where a big chunk of the middle work is now being done by AI. I mean, I
Yes.
just think that's going to be mirrored. You have Vibe coding, but I know Vibe, everything is going to be coming out soon, because it's going to, and maybe Lutra will be the thing that facilitates the Vibe X, you know, the all the different vibes. Yeah, exactly.
No, I know. We'll be like vibe working one day. Like, yeah, just go to
Yeah.
my inbox and just do stuff for me.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly.
Amazing. I really wanted to touch upon kind of going back to your roots. A lot of entrepreneurs are probably going to be listening to this. So I just kind of wanted to know a little bit about what your personal journey was into entrepreneurship, and, you know, what did it look like leading up to Lutra?
Got it. So I think there were two phases in my journey there. I think first phase was when the first startup that I was in really big and was at Coursera. So this was in the 2012, 2011 era where online education, MOOCs were a big thing then. And for me back then, it was, I think it's all about figuring out, what is the world needing and how we can bring it there. And back then, education wasn't that accessible, right? So we had OCW and all this from MIT, but getting access to education content was not that great. And for me, I was working in machine learning, and I was thinking about how can we get more people educated, and that because that would help the field develop faster. And then for me and Andrew, we put out a landing page for online machine learning classes, and then from Stanford, and so many people signed up, right? And that quickly grew into a whole company, a whole movement behind online education there. That was like one journey I had in there, but really like figuring out, market demand, where the gaps are, and then figuring out how can something, directly, personally, address that. So did that for quite a few years in there, saw the company grow from the ground up. And then maybe more recently at Lutra, similar in some fashions there, where I started to see, again, like I had a lot of background in just AI and machine learning. And so being able to understand the abilities and what the technology can do, and then seeing out in the market, like, man, everyone is still working so manual repetitively. My wife works in the finance space, and then see her in Excel all the day, clicking, dragging, writing formulas, and it's just incredibly manual, right? Like organizing spreadsheets and all. And then when you start to see that market gap there, and you say, we can actually make technology that helps make some of these boring manual process go away, you start to get excited about working on that, right? But I think in both cases, both Lutra and Coursera, the thing that we started off with was, just very small demos, right? Very small concepts. Like, we didn't start off with like, we have 2,000 classes and launch with that. We had, I think, was 3 courses: machine learning, database, and definitely cryptography. The 3 of them, in database and AI. One of those was those 3 in there. And then for Lutra, it was like, we got it out there, very early versions with Google Workspaces and basic email, a bit of research in there, and then got a feedback, right? And then quickly getting user feedback, quickly iterating on the product, getting more people to use it, and then trying to really quickly find your path to delivering value in there. So it's kind of like the journey in there. And I think part of it is the more you can validate what you're doing has real value to users, the better. So the more quickly you can get something out there in the hands of people and say, hey, look at this demo, or try it out, use it yourself. Do you like this? Like, what's missing in it? And then if you see that, do they come back to it every day? That's kind of like the signal that you want to see there. And so for us, I think it's really looking at that. AI is a space where people come and try things out, but really what you want to see is this recurring use they come up with.
That's like a technical thing as well. Like, that's interesting. So it's getting it in the hands of users is a technical thing, and how to launch something. Do you think that if you were to look at how you put it together and your first kind of versions of getting it in the hands of users, was it the most beautiful technical architecture, or was it hacked together to get it out there and get users on it?
Oh boy, I would say in the different styles, the different experiences. So at Coursera, it was very hacked together. It was like really patchy, and then we had to rewrite it like 2 times.
Yeah.
At Lutra, this round around, it was a little bit more built out. I think maybe a bit more than we liked in some ways.
Okay.
And I think partly there's 2 reasons in there. One is that we wanted to build a software that will be reading and working on very, personal data. If this is reading your business emails or reading your CRM data, we really have to have some guarantees, like, like this data is secure, that no one's going to access it, reliable. So we spend a bit of time on that very early on, just the nature of the product, right? So that's kind of like where we started. And then over time, I think the hard part is the focus is really getting it to work reliably, right? And then I think all of the technical work we did was really that on that lines. Now, I think the hard part in the AI space, unlike my previous experience, was that the technology is shifting so quickly. And by that, how is that hard, right? I mean, you give you two examples. One is context windows. In a year and a half, 2 years ago, if you remember, when the GPT first came out, it was like 8K, or 32K tokens. If you think about that, that's like, wait, that's ridiculously small these days. But back then, to make anything really work, you had to work around those small context windows. Like 2K or 4K was the most common context window sizes. Today, it's like your base problem is the 20K tokens. It just blows all of that out of the water. So the technology is shifting very quickly. So one of the hardest things I think for entrepreneurs to do in the last 2 years, few years moving forward is really understanding which parts of that tech stack is going to become easier to work with, which parts you should invest into, which parts you should have workarounds for. And sometimes it's, finding the sweet spot, and sometimes being too early can also be risky. That you spend all your time creating patches and workarounds that you undo maybe 6 months to a year later. So it's a bit of a difficult thing right now, I think, in the space there. Yeah.
Cool.
I think this is a good time for your question, David, about all the new open AI releases.
Yeah. So in terms of keeping up with all the technology, maybe this is just an example is, it's the 5th of June, 2025. I think a couple of days ago, OpenAI dropped another big release, as they do every now and again. Do you guys have like a full-time team that is like just looking for releases and figuring out what the hell can we do with them? Or how does it affect you, the speed of this movement of the technology currently, and all the businesses competing to outdo each other? It must be really hard as a business that relies on them, and it's your strength to kind of keep understanding what's going on and using it to drive you guys forward.
Oh boy, it's hard. But I'll say it's hard because it's noisy, I think. Every release, every new model that comes up always sounds very fun and splashy, but when you try it, does it actually do anything different for you? Does it materially move the metric on a particular quality for a user, or cost metric because it's cheaper now? And that's actually not very clear. So we've seen like Claude had released Sonnet 3.5, then 3.7, then 4. Honestly, 3.5 was the big shift. That was really, really a step function change, and we really want to get to that really quickly. 3.7 was better, definitely, but is it a major leap in there? Not really. It's pretty good. 3.7 to 4, again, it felt a bit more incremental there, but still, we're going to get to it, right? So I think a lot of it is really understanding that delta there. And I think for us, it's a bit more measured. We don't just jump to the latest thing they release and try to integrate it right away. We kind of evaluate it first, and like, does this going to materially change lives of our users? And number two is that, does it actually improve or fix a user problem that people are running into, right? Now, the fanciest, shiniest thing may not be what your users care about at all. So maybe as an example in here is like OpenAI has now really, really good image models. They just released it. We replace some of the image models in our system with that one. But now we need to spend the work on like teaching our users, what can you actually do with this image model, even it's better, right? So a lot of it is not just adopting it, but connecting the dots and making sure that the outcomes for your users are achieved, right? And I think that goes back into like use cases and what you care about and the value you bring to your users. So for example, Google has the best video model right now with VO3. It's amazingly good. But then, most users on our platform are not creating video content. They're not using our platform to do that. So even though that's really exciting, we're probably not going to rush to integrate it anytime soon, because it's not what our users are looking for. Instead, our users are using us a lot to do like data analysis, insights reporting, automating tasks. You don't need a best image model. You don't need a best video model, but you want the best data extraction model. So oddly enough, things like Google's Flash 2.5 Pro, Flash 2.5 thinking, that model affects us a lot. And that's the kind of thing that we pay attention to. So maybe more on the ones, maybe more targeted at what we care about there. I think the other half is helping users also like cut through the noise and understand what's valuable to them. Even I have problems catching up, picking up the pace of developments in here. And the honest thing is that I think a lot of the new stuff that comes out often doesn't work really well the first week they're out there. And so really seeing a bit of how people use it, how they're experimenting, it helps quite a bit. Yeah, and I think so. So I guess we are a bit more measured in how we react to these things there.
Makes a lot of sense. And do you
Yeah.
think there's anything on the horizon that would have a massive impact to your business positively that you feel is going to come out, or anything along those lines?
Oh, I would say the biggest challenge right now, I think the model qualities are really getting really good, but they're not fast and cheap enough. You know, if you use the software as a user, you're asking it to do something, your AI just spinning, thinking, spending like 2 minutes thinking and doing something and doing it wrongly. And then now it's like, you go like, oh, I just waited 3 minutes, waited something wrong. It's very annoying. So I think a lot of the things that I'm actually very excited about now is speed and costs. Because we have models that we actually are at a point which I think applications are behind in what they can do. Like we don't need more new capabilities. We actually need more applications that really exploit the capabilities of what already exists, right? But then to do that, if it's too expensive and too slow, or we cannot really deploy great user experiences, or it'll be too expensive, we'll be charging people, if you charge someone, $10 to have an AI read your email and summarize it for you, you'd be like, no way. But if I give you like 20 cents to do that, you're like, sure, I can spend that. So the cost and speed trade-off needs to improve quite a bit more, and that really excites me. And then alongside of that, I think increasing the context windows for the models. But increasingly, I think what you start to see is that instead of having models that memorize the world, we're going to focus really on models that reason about what they're given to do, right? And then so the models no longer have to memorize every single fact. But when instead at runtime, we give them all the facts that are relevant and say, now make inferences based on that data. To do that, you need very big context windows. And oddly enough, I hypothesize you need much smaller models, right? Because if the models are just really good at reasoning and not need to memorize things, they're going to be smaller. So my hope, or to your point of what I'm looking forward to, smaller models, faster. Because of that, they're faster, they're cheaper, and they're more reasoning based, and they're more bigger context windows. And if that all comes to hold true, I think we will see tons of interesting applications emerge.
That is so insightful. That's a really, really great answer. And on that, I think right now we can also see, I think it's not just about the context size, because I can see the comparison between Gemini 2.5 and Claude 4 as it is right now. They even, I know Claude 4's got, context window of 200K or whatever it is right now. But if the context gets too long in Claude 4, it loses track. Whereas in Gemini 2.5, if the context, even if it gets too long in that, if it gets the same length, it's better at going back through its past context, even if they have been sent the same context. So I think there's all those nuances that when you're using them close, you start to see what's going on there. So it's really exciting. It's really insightful. Thanks for that answer.
Exactly. Right. We need big context windows that are effectively used, and hopefully smaller models that when using Claude or Gemini 2.5 for about coding, you don't really care about it understanding all the random facts you read about in the world, right? There's so many things you just don't care about. So it's like, if we can really move towards reasoning models and figure out what prompts should just come with context. Always, and then that would just dramatically change how we view things. And my bet is, just as how compute and storage has gotten cheaper and faster in the last 2 decades, same things can happen to AI in the next 2 decades. So all these things, some time horizon, will be running on our device. They're just going to be fascinating to see what happens there. You're not even calling the LLM providers anymore to get tokens, just on your iPhone. This is all happening right on device itself. Then you start to ask yourself a question on like, wait, if that's the case, and if the models are really fast, can whatever I need to do on the app just be generated at the time of use when I want it? What if the code for the app is just like, I press a button, hey, I need to do this now, and app appears just for the task, and good, right? Does that. And so I think the future of how these things work will change a lot when that happens, right? When faster, cheaper, better. And I think we're at the stage where model quality is pretty good. Can be better, but it's pretty good. Like we need to figure out applications and really get ahead of that now.
And what's your view on voice as well? Because obviously, what you're building towards feels like it's just going to be your partner in crime, not in crime, your partner in goodness or whatever the opposite is about it. But it feels like it's just going to be another you that is working on behalf of you.
Very good question. I think I view it as an abstraction on like what is the most efficient input and output into a external system, an AI system, right? And I think voice has to be one of the most efficient inputs. We speak, we talk way faster than we type. Better if you can think into the system, neural link some point of time. So I think voice is going to be a big part of it because it's the most efficient way of communicating in the system. And oddly enough, now flip it around and say, what is the most efficient way for a system to communicate with us? I don't think it's a wall of markdown text, right? I think it's actually going to be visual. It's going to be interactive. It's going to be video. It's going to be 3D. So at the same time, I think increasingly, imagine if a system, you said, hey, go and do all this work for me. It does all the work. It comes back to you. I'd rather give you a text of like, this is all the things I've done. It says, I'm going to make you a 3-second clip of all the things I've done and just, quickly show you how this happened, stuff like that. Or I'm going to make you a little website that's just custom for just the task I did so that you can quickly browse through and make sure everything is right. And so I think both the input and output modalities are going to move towards more efficient mechanisms. And so neither of those are going to be pure text, I think. And they're going to be input, I think, some degree of voice, definitely, and output, I think, some degree of interactive, rich experiences, video, web pages, websites. Imagine these AI systems generating a little website for every single query you give it. And why not? Why not, right? And it's like, just need to be cheap enough to do that.
I mean, that's something that was brought up by, I think, Peter Nixie a little while ago, was this theory, this theory of the future that we were going to have dynamic UIs that will just adapt to you. So instead of, having an about us and the case studies and whatever, like we all always have now, that's going to be very archaic very soon because these AIs are going to anticipate more or less what we're going to look for and serve us exactly what we're looking for, at least using the internet.
Yeah,
exactly.
there's so many applications. It's so exciting where it's all going. And just a question over what you're taking on here, because you've got to be like confident in yourself, and so I don't know, it's amazing that you're taking on such a big goal here. What does it take from you? Because this is huge. You're taking on something where everyone can do everything, and you're providing that platform. That's a big. You've got to have a lot of confidence, and you've got to really back yourself. So, how did you get yourself in the position to think I'm going to take on the world here? Because that's effectively what you're doing, right?
Yeah, every day, every now and then, I wonder, like, what have I gotten myself into?
It's fantastic.
But I know that. I mean, the truth is that there's always a degree of like imposter syndrome happening, right?
Yeah.
But I think the thing is that it's something. The more core of it is less about that. It's more about just an innate motivation that was like, hey, I just want to see this happen.
Yeah.
But that's just the more thing in there, right? You really want to see something happen. You want to see it being possible, and ultimately, I want to see users of our platform like be delighted at that, right? So 2 days ago, we talked to a restaurant owner, and he was like, "Yeah, Lutra has given me so much value. I do all the stuff with it," and we're like, "Wow, that's very motivating." And I think that's the things that we want to see in there. And I think it's less of like grand scale, take over the world, blah 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 stuff. It's more of I have a vision of like how the world could be different. How much can I bring this to life, and how much can I have lots of people really benefiting from it and really getting value from it? And I think maybe I think someone had a thing that it's better to have 100 people that really love what they're doing than 1,000 people that kind of like you. Like I think that's kind of the framework I think about. Like the side effect of doing something really amazing is that lots of people will come in and do it, but just focus on doing something amazing and then get the word out there, right? Of course, right? So that's kind of how I think about it. So not worry too much about how do I get myself into this, but worry more about am I really building something of value to the world and getting people to understand what is it and use it. Yeah.
Cool.
That's awesome. Can you give any advice to the entrepreneurs that are sitting on listening to this that face, a sense of overwhelm when they're looking at like a vast market such as AI? Like, how do you personally grapple with that feeling?
Yeah, it's a very difficult feeling. Number one, don't feel bad that you're feeling that way. Everyone feels that way. I feel that way too. Everyone does, right? Everyone's like, oh my God, this is coming. Oh, this is such a big market. Oh my God, the big players are doing all this stuff. What am I going to do? That's but number one, it's a very natural feeling. I'll embrace it. That's how life is. Number two, I think, is that people are finding solutions. People are eager to really see how this could help them. Focus on that. Find the people that really want what you are building and build for them. Don't build with the I need to take over the market mindset, because that's not going to work. Build with I have these three people in front of me. They all have very similar needs, hopefully, and I can help them solve their problems really well. And I can see how helping them would then help the next 100 people, and help the next 100 people, and help the next 1,000 people. Maybe I can't see beyond that. That's okay. But then I can see the next few steps are clear, and I know what to do there, right? So that's really like taking the first step forward and making sure that the next three people on the platform that you're building are happy. I think that's really what you focus on there. Yeah. And, the market's big, technology is moving fast. We're all feeling a bit of a existential crisis sometimes, especially with AI. And that's a natural feeling. I think it's like we all feel that way. Yeah.
That's fantastic. Yeah. Do you ever think you could open now? Are you beyond the stage where you think I could open up my Twitter, or I could open up my LinkedIn and see someone with 50 times the funding that I've got is coming to the same space as me, and does that? I mean, it must have happened actually, but so how has that been feeling like throughout this journey, because of the amount of companies that are trying to get in on AI right now?
Yeah. I think it's noisy. It's noisy,
Yeah.
right? I think winning the funding game doesn't mean you're winning the long-term business game, the long-term delivering value to users game, right? You've seen lots of companies raise lots of money and also not work out. There's a bunch I can name off. You can just look it up yourself. There's a ton of them, right? So just be careful on what is a vanity metric to you and what is not a vanity metric. I think funding is mostly vanity metrics for people, right? Now, suddenly there's some like proven there, like some people support them as capital now. The real metrics you care about are, hey, what are people saying about your product? Are people, what's your revenue? Are people paying for it? And the one paying for it is toying with it. There's lots of companies out there where they raise lots of money, but no one's really paying for the product or using it. Not great. So I think just really focus and hone in on that aspects. And, as an entrepreneur, there are two ways, right? You can chase money and try to chase funding, and hopefully that gets you somewhere. Or you can chase users and let funding chase you. Right. So as much as possible, you probably want to be the space of chase users as much as you can. Are people talking about your product organically? Is word of mouth happening? Are people posting reviews of your product? What are they saying, good and bad about it? That's really the focus, right? And then from there, if you can get 100 people to like you, can you get that 100 people to bring the next 1,000 people to like you, right? And keep going from there. So like, if you think about all the companies we admire, been around, stuff like that, say like Figma, Airtable, all this Notion, all these things, they were not overnight successes that way. Each of them had a long journey they went through. There was rough, that there was someone's great, someone's bad. The company that shoots to the moon is the exception, not the norm, right? And often, if you look carefully at the history, it isn't like an overnight thing they went to the moon. It's like, oh man, they spent 3-4 years just slogging it out and having a really tough time. So like people don't talk about the overnight success is never overnight, right? Embrace the journey a little bit, I would say. And this is what you're getting yourself into if you're getting into this. So you expect that. But focus on delivering value. And I think if you do it right, the rest will follow. And maybe you don't find it, and that's that's okay, right? The journey is more important than the destination.
Final question from me, I promise. There are gonna be entrepreneurs here listening that want to build stuff. You've probably got a million ideas of what you would want to build, and you have to focus on what you're doing. Give us your top idea of what you can't build yourself, but someone listening to this could go and take and go, that's going to be like an amazing business. Come on, one that you don't think you're going to do next week.
David, don't do that.
This is hard. This is hard. This is hard because my mind is just always about what we are building. But I would say the interesting thing in here is most people haven't figured out how to use this brand new tech in their lives yet. So find a little niche, a little small thing that many people are going to find very, hopefully, interesting and build it. And I think the thing that I would say, don't like, well, maybe I'll say not to build. Don't build a clone of Cursor or Windsurf or all these guys on an agent that does random stuff. Don't do that. Do the things that are of interest to you. Like, that's like we have great image models, video models. What can we do with that today? Stuff like that. It's yeah, if when everyone else is zigging, can you zag a bit, right? Go and see what communities out there are underserved and go serve them, right? Some of the things that I'll think about. Because I think right now the problem is that the future is here, but it's heavily unevenly distributed. Most people have no idea about technology. They just don't. If you can do something about that, I think you will find a lot of value delivered to people. Yeah.
Amazing.
That was a great answer for someone that didn't think they could answer that well. So thank you. Thank you very much.
Very cool.
Cool. So
Awesome.
just, do you have any last parting thoughts for anybody who's listening to this? Anything you want to share before we wrap?
No, I think keep going. If you're an entrepreneur, the journey is it's not a smooth one. Don't expect it to be. If it's rough, say like this is how it is, But then figure out your inner motivation. Take care of yourself, be healthy, and then really just keep pushing. And I think ultimately, turn out the noise, right? There's so much noise in this space, especially in AI, and really focus on what really matters to you. What are you building? Are you excited about what you're building? And are your users excited about what you are building? If that's all true, I think you will find something. Keep going right there.
Amazing. So just like that, another amazing episode is in the back. A massive thank you to the unstoppable David, as always, and the unparalleled Jiquan for sharing their incredible insights. So yeah, my brain seriously feels much bigger today. And I'm definitely going to be telling everybody all week that Lutra means otter. So
Thank you so much.
thank you very much, guys. And yeah, I will wrap this up.